there is a stereotype, again, among a lot of liberals who don't live in
Absolutely.
West Virginia, that these coal unions are like reactionary or they're like the regressive unions. But actually, the United Mine Workers of America have pushed Joe Manchin not just to support Build Back Better, but also to support the PRO Act. That was a few months ago. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how we should understand the relationship between these unions and Joe Manchin, and talk a little bit about what these unions still have the leverage to do.
Yeah, I mean, I still think they culturally have more leverage. They have there's a lot of retirees too. And that's one reason West Virginia really switched, is all the sort of FDR, retirees, passed away eventually. And their kids they either left West Virginia or stayed and, didn't vote the same way. But the UMWA still has a lot of cultural power, even though they don't have the membership that they do. And, they've had to deal, like I think Karl Marx talked about like subjective circumstances and an objective. You have to deal with that objective reality you're in too, and what you're going to do. And they, it would definitely be poetic if they were able to push Manchin to vote for Build Back Better, which includes all these climate provisions, right? But most, coal miners are just great people, hardworking people, and people from West Virginia feel like, we haven't done a lot, but we know how to mine coal and we know how to do it right, and we know, and we take pride in that. And you start messing with that, you're going to have problems, and that's the problem that we've had, and that's opened the door for someone like Manchin to rise. And, over the last 20 years, it's been the party of Manchin in West Virginia. Nobody would doubt that. And someone like Bernie coming in, I think the thing, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that Bernie, that Manchin's more threatened by Bernie than Mitch McConnell, because he does have rapport. He's willing to go into McDowell. He did go into McDowell County, West Virginia, and talk to people. He's willing to talk to anybody. And that's something Barack Obama refused to do in West Virginia. Only came here when Byrd died and a couple other times. He refused to engage with people. And we have a huge legacy of JFK and other presidents coming here to talk to people, because, they're in hard to reach areas. But, I think it would be fairly interesting to see if they are able to push him, because I think they have done the MWA, particularly, and Cecil Roberts, have done a great job of, trying to leverage the power that they do have on Senator Manchin.
Right.
And I think, like, back to, Hillary Clinton, I think the one thing I wanted to bring up, we remember when she came here and called people deplorables, and Manchin was with her, and that was just like a huge blow, to that. I remember thinking that night how horrible. And, and the fact of the matter is, most people who voted for Trump are not somebody that is completely ideological and just like news junkies. These are just everyday, most of them are great people.
Right.
And you can't just throw them by the wayside, call them fascists, which so many liberals do. It's like, what are you doing? And do they not know you can't win with that? Like, that's not a winning formula.
Right.
I mean, some of the things with identity politics too. It's like, that's not a winning formula. You can't win. Like, good luck, but you can't win with that kind of strategy.
Yeah, that's interesting. That reminds me of when the 2018 teacher strikes were going on. There was obviously like a huge outpouring of support across the country. But I remember there was still some commentators who were like, well, I think some of these teachers may have voted for Trump. And it was like, oh my God. But anyway,
like, great.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I know. It's like, then we won, right?
Yeah. Well, I was joking around at one point. I said, West Virginia needs leftists that don't hate 75% of West Virginians, because it's like, you can't win with that. And you have to meet people where they are. And most people are good people. Maybe that's where I'm coming from. And you get to talk to them, and you go hang out at a union, UMWA local, and talk to people. Man, they'll have you in tears. I mean, like, you'll talk about the history and what they have a nice community of people that are great. And, they've done something all their life. They've built a camaraderie and a family. And, the role of women too in West Virginia just has been huge as part of the labor movement. Mother Jones, we can go to the future here too. But, it's just very difficult to see people really crap on West Virginia in that sense, because I think it belies a real misunderstanding, and it's not productive. You're not going to get anywhere name calling.
So to follow up on that, just within the state itself, do you feel like the teacher strikes in 2018 changed or transformed the political culture of West Virginia in any way?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I mean, I think that, there's some great, it was one of the best things I've ever witnessed was the teacher strikes in West Virginia. Took my kid there every day when the schools were closed. But it actually had more of an effect around the country than it did in West Virginia in terms of
Mm.
policy changes.
Mhm.
And it came back, Jen, to that fundamental question that the UMWA's come back to, and mostly all of their strikes going back to the New Deal, healthcare, right? I mean, that
Mhm.
was the
Yeah.
reason part of the reason for the strike was access to healthcare. We're still fighting these same issues, and not having Medicare for all or having a universal health system to take this
Mhm.
thing off the table, so people can fight for other things, is a huge issue. But I think in terms of its lasting effect, I mean, if not to quote Bill Parcells, the Giants football coach, you're only as good as your record. But if you look at like what's happened at the legislature, I mean, we have right to work now. They repealed
Yeah.
prevailing wage, paycheck protection passed, and they've passed a whole slew of, anti-worker laws, independent contracting. We have the widest independent contracting laws in the country. It's been terrible in that regard. But there are some interesting things that are happening too. Republicans in the House, in the West Virginia House, have formed a labor caucus. Like, how often do you see
Mhm.
Republicans form a labor caucus?
Right.
So I mean, that's there. I've always said that people in West Virginia, if it was a canoe, they're sort of canoeing to the right on social issues, and they're canoeing to the left on economic issues.
Right.
And that's where actually the movable people in this country, they exist in that upper left quadrant,
Yep.
where
Yep.
people are to the left on economic issues. But when it comes to sort of identitarian issues, they're not for that.
Right.
They're much more so, and that's across racial lines, because
Yep.
when you get out of the professional management class and you talk to everyday people, working class people, not people like me who do their work, in front of a computer, you get a whole different perspective. People, are really want to come together and build a basis of solidarity,
Mhm.
and they don't want to be torn apart by cultural issues that are
Right.
dividing people. And I don't understand from outside looking in why people think that's a good idea, to feel recognized in a sense on some of these issues, and realizing that it's just the math isn't there to win like that.
Right. Right.
You have to talk to you, and that's why unions to me are the best form of reducing racism. There absolutely is forming a union, because it brings people together over something that they have a shared interest in. And when people
Right.
talk and get to know each other, guess what, Jen? They begin to hang out more and go,
Right.
do things, I mean, and that's the breakdown of social capital just in this country in West Virginia, and the distrust of institutions is
Mhm.
massive too. But unions used to bring people together. That was something you did. It's something you got together at picnics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things like that. And so if there's I went to my last union thing I went to, I remember there was a gun raffle. They had a gun raffle. Like, I thought it was cool. I signed up.
Yeah.
I hunt. I love to hunt.
I don't know if you know this, Ted,
Yeah.
but I'm from Idaho, so I'm
Okay.
well acquainted with the gun raffle.
Yeah. So I mean, but some people will be like, "Oh my God, there's a gun raffle! How dare you?" I'm like, "No, this is great. This is
Right.
part
Yeah.
of, like,
Right.
trying to understand people and see where they are."
Right. Right.
It's a brave thing these days, I think, just to listen to both sides a little bit and talk to
Yeah.
people and not judge them. Because
Mhm.
people, one thing I've learned in life is people are multidimensional.
Yeah.
They might be for marijuana legalization. They might not be pro-choice. They
Right.
might
Exactly.
be for their labor and want to fight right to work, but they have some problems with,
Some climate thing or
yeah,
whatever.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
you have to figure out the things that we can come together on.
Mhm.
I mean, now I'm starting to sound like Manchin a little bit, but you do
Right.
have to. I don't want to get that part, but it's
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
the economic issues
Mhm.
and that's what divides the other side. If you
Mhm.
bring out the issues that divide their caucus, which you
Mhm.
think we would do if we were smart, I mean, that's what they do. They pick issues like, well, no, this will divide them.
Right.
But for a lot of people in West Virginia, if the Democrats aren't delivering on the material goods, Republicans are delivering for some of these people on the social goods,
Right.
whether it's
Exactly.
like banning critical race theory or
Right.
whatever it
Right.
is.
Yeah.
They feel
Yeah.
like they're getting something. They're banning abortion in West Virginia at 15
Mhm.
weeks.
Mhm.
They're allowing allowing anybody to carry a concealed weapon. At least
Right.
they feel like they're getting something. I mean,
Right. Exactly.
and what are the Democrats doing? Like,
Right.
we're gonna barely do this and this. I mean, it's fascinating, but I
Yeah.
think, like, it's a national problem, and I think West Virginia working class people, I mean, the Democrats they left the party. I mean, this is all
Right.
documented, right, in the 80s by Joel Rogers and other folks. I mean, they became the party of the professional management class. And I don't want them to be the party of me. I want to be the party of the working class.
Right. So I think my last question for you is kind of pulling these threads together and thinking through like how some of these like gaps can start to shrink. Right. So you work for the Ohio River Valley Institute, which, among other things, focuses on energy policy. So I want to ask you, just as kind of a closing question, how does given all of the controversies and push and pull around coal that you just outlined, how can West Virginia start to begin a just transition, or how can West Virginia create not just green jobs but good jobs in the state?
Yeah, that's very hard. I mean, one of the first things I would say, don't say just transition because it kind of sounds like just do it Nike, like, oh, just transition. Like, yeah,
Right. Yeah.
sure, that'll be easy. And if you talk to union members, like, we've never seen a just transition. We have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
This is a nonprofit sector derived thing. It's a nonprofit industrial, I mean, it's a little different in Europe, but I think the key to do that uh, is to think of alternate things. There's kind of a push to, West Virginia has a ban on nuclear power.
Mm.
And there's a lot of question marks around nuclear power, but it could serve as a good source of really good paying jobs. And if some of these plants get built, if they repower former coal plants with nuclear power, some of them, these are jobs that can last 50, 60, 70 years. Like, what companies can say that they do that? And that's why people in West Virginia love coal jobs, because
Yeah.
especially at coal plants, I mean, like, you put a coal plant somewhere, it's going to survive for 50 or 60 years. That's a lot of stability.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think they look at it sort of like that. But I think the one thing that Bernie did that was really good is leveling with people and saying,
Mhm.
he didn't try to bullshit anybody.
Yeah.
Don't bullshit. People can smell it a mile away,
Yeah.
and don't try to sneak anything past, and just say, that's why it's so disappointing to watch Manchin, because I mean, we all joked around at the beginning, like, he could ask for 60 billion, 100 billion for West Virginia,
Right.
and we could have one of the best national parks in the state. We could have huge water infrastructure, the best broadband. We could be making huge inroads to really transition. And I think when I think about transition, I think, it has to include people in rural areas, and it has
Yeah.
to include infrastructure and things like that. And I think that's a really important part. I mean, West Virginia, there is coal, the metallurgical coal that's used for making steel, and that's probably going to be around for a while. But the steam coal, everybody knows it's going out the door. But it's a huge problem, because renewable energy just doesn't pay nearly like these industries paid.
Right.
And they're just very different. People don't come together to, going down in a coal shaft and a coal mine is very different than installing, wind energy, or
Mhm.
in terms of coming together. It's a very hard thing to figure out. But I think the first thing is to level with people,
Yeah.
and to put investments in areas all over the place, like energy efficiency, but just solid infrastructure, billions of dollars. And doing that could really go a long way.
If you like this video from The Jacobin Show, please hit like and subscribe and share with your friends. Thanks.